that. It is 25 minutes to 1 o'clock on Alberta at noon. There are reports today that today's federal budget could contain more changes to immigration. This on top of the government's recent announcement of tougher language rules and longer wait times for people who want to become Canadian citizens. The Conservative government says it's trying to streamline the system and also to prevent people from scamming their way into Canadian citizenship. Essentially, the government wants to make it tougher for people to become Canadian. What do you think? Should we tighten the rules? Could any of these prospective changes affect you? What has your own experience been getting your citizenship? What about your family members? Are you still waiting to get some family members here? Should we let more people in or should we keep more people out? Give us a call and tell us about your own experience and what you think. 1-866-468-4422. That's 1-866-468-4422. Send an email to alberta@noon@cbc.ca or a tweet to Alberta@noon. My guest today to take your calls, emails, and tweets is someone who helps people cope with these rules on a daily basis. He is immigration lawyer Raj Sharma with Stewart, Sharma and Harzani. Hi, Raj.
Hello.
Great to have you with us today. So what did you think when you saw the new rules for citizenship?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag. There's some changes that certainly make sense. I think the only way to become a Canadian is actually to spend a significant amount of time here. So requiring permanent residents to live in Canada for 4 years out of 6 in order to apply for citizenship is, I think, a reasonable and appropriate measure.
And how long has it been up to this point?
It used to be 3 years out of 4, or as it stands right now, it's 3 years out of 4.
Mm-hmm. So that's just going to make it a little bit stiffer, a little more of a commitment if you want to become a Canadian.
Well, the problem with the rules before was that it didn't actually specify physical residency. So 3 out of 4, and federal court kind of interpreted it in 2 different ways. Did it mean 2 feet on the ground, or did it mean that you have a substantial connection to Canada? So a lot of people were getting citizenship that weren't actually living in Canada. So the new rules are very, very clear. They're crystal clear. 4 years out of 6, 6 months minimum per year, 2 feet on the ground.
And is that the most major change, would you say? What are some of the biggest changes from your perspective?
Well, I think that's the reasonable, logical change, which is the increase of residency requirements. It's the Conservative government, so they can't seem to resist throwing in some oddball measures. For example, the minister has the ability to secretly designate anyone as a Canadian citizen. That seems a little bit strange to me. The minister now has the power unilaterally to revoke citizenship in the case of fraud or misrepresentation. And of course, there's this sort of revoking citizenship of the terrorist that holds dual citizenship.
That makes sense. I mean, the last 2 points seem to make a lot of sense. But what do you think of that point that the minister can designate anyone a Canadian citizen that the minister deems appropriate? What do you think about that idea?
I think that's odd. I think that Canadian citizenship is a great honor and a great benefit. And I think that there should be some transparency when we give that benefit or that honor to any individual. I mean, presumably this individual is not complying with our residency requirements. So we're giving Canadian citizenship to somebody. I think people should know who that is.
And so it gives an awful lot of discretion to a member of the government. And how do you think it's going to make it more difficult to become a Canadian citizen? I mean, we talked about one rule, the residency rule, the feet on the ground rule that you described earlier. But what else is going to make it tougher to become a Canadian, Raj?
Well, there's a language test. You have to provide separate language testing. And of course, they've stiffened the knowledge testing. Now, I don't take any issue with making the knowledge test, a little bit harder. I'm not saying an 8-year-old with a crayon could have passed the knowledge test before the Conservatives took power, but that test is a little bit tougher, and I think that that's appropriate. The majority of individuals who take the knowledge test still pass. They get the Coles Notes of Canadian history mailed to them by the government prior to the exam. And so if they read that booklet, they stand a fair chance of passing the test.
And some people say we should all be reading those things a little more often or be more familiar with them. So not such a bad idea from your perspective.
Not such a bad idea. And in terms of the language testing has been expanded from any applicant from 14 years of age to 64. Now, that requirement may have some unintended consequences. We may see a sort of Anglophilic sort of consequence to that. Older immigrants from English-speaking countries will become citizens much faster, will be able to vote much faster, whereas older immigrants from other countries where English is not the first language may be prevented from fully partaking in the fabric, which is Canadian society.
And theoretically, when a person becomes a Canadian citizen, it enhances our country. So do you think that these new language rules are somewhat harsh and might keep some very wonderful people out of this country, or from not out of the country, but from becoming Canadian citizens?
Well, they're a little bit odd. So a 14-year-old who's already been in the country for presumably 4 to 6 years is already in school in the English or French medium. Requiring a language test from a 14-year-old, I think, is unnecessary. And combined with that is they've put more discretion and more power in the hands of the minister, but they've taken away the discretion from the citizenship judges. So, for example, where an individual kind of didn't quite meet the requirements in the past, you could have a citizenship judge who could step in and say, okay, well, you know what, we've got substantial compliance and let's award this person the grant of citizenship.
Interesting indeed. And I look forward to hearing from our listeners in just a moment, but I want to ask you about a couple of other things in the meantime. Raj Sharma is my guest today. He's an immigration lawyer with Stewart, Sharma and Harzani, and we are asking you, what do you think of these new citizenship rules? Do you think it should be tougher to become a Canadian citizen? What do you think about the more challenging language rules and some of the other elements of this bill? What do you think about the minister's discretion to allow somebody to become a Canadian citizen if they don't meet the other requirements? 1-866-468-4422. We'd also love to hear from you if you've gone through this process yourself. What was it like for you? Was it tough enough? 1-866-468-4422. Are you waiting for family members and trying to get them through the system? You can also send us an email to alberta@noon@cbc.ca or a tweet to Alberta@noon. And just before we bring our listeners into the conversation, Raj, I want to ask you about a report that was a headline in the Globe and Mail this morning about what could be in this afternoon's budget, and that is the investor class of immigrant that has been coming to Canada the last number of years. And apparently the budget is going to eliminate that investor class. What do you think about that? I
think it's a good thing. The investor class has been suspended for some time. I fundamentally disagree with any program that allows someone to buy status in Canada, and that's what the investor class was doing. Let's not forget that Mohammed Shafi, who was convicted of killing his 3 daughters and his first wife in an honor killing in Kingston, came to Canada under the investor class. So I think the investor class sort of, I think, didn't get the types of individuals that we want to be in Canada, which is individuals that want to subscribe to our way of life and subscribe to our ideology.
So they don't have to meet any of the other regular citizenship rules if they are coming as an investor?
Well, you could apply now. So an individual under the investor class would have reduced requirements, for example, for language. Mr. Shafi, of course, required full interpretation during his trial, so had apparently no proficiency in the English language.
1-866-468-4422. My guest is Raj Sharma, an immigration lawyer with Stewart, Sharma and Harzani. And Raj, we will go first to Brad, who is on the line in Dawson Creek. Hi, Brad. What do you think about these new rules? Do you think it should be tougher to become a Canadian citizen?
At this point, yes, I do.
And why is that?
The reason being, like, I don't follow a lot of statistics, but I have heard over the years that it's that more and more the growth seems to keep happening year after year, and actual Canadian citizens are worrying about being the minority, right? So maybe if they toughen it up just a little bit to let us maybe catch up a little, it'd be I don't see it as a bad thing.
But what do you mean by the Canadians are a minority? Because many of the Canadians have actually come from other places or are sons and daughters of immigrants.
Yes, and I realize that, but as far as people coming over that haven't been here like really any length of time, like. A lot of people have come from immigrants, but this is dating hundreds and hundreds of years ago, right? I'm talking more along the lines of just kind of hopping over and here you go.
Brad, thanks very much for the call. And Raj, I want to ask you about the numbers of immigrants in recent years. Do we have more immigrants becoming Canadian citizens in the last 5 to 10 years, for instance?
No, we've seen a drop in the grant of citizenship under this particular government. The grant of citizenship or the changing in requirements for citizenship will not affect the number of immigrants being allowed into Canada. The number of immigrants allowed into Canada is about steady in terms of permanent residency, about 250,000 a year. Now, I've debated Mr. Martin McElligott of the Centre for Immigration Policy Reform and other, and there's a lot of statistics out there as to the fiscal transfer that new immigrants are costing Canadians money, and there are arguments out there to reduce the total number of immigrants down, especially given the state of unemployment in the country. But the changes to the citizenship laws will not affect the number of immigrants coming into Canada.
All right. Thank you very much. And thanks, Brad, for the call. We are going to Calgary now, where Anil is on the line. Hello, Anil. What do you think of these new citizenship rules?
Yeah, I think it's good to implement these things. However, I have a couple of questions for Mr. Raj.
Sure. Go ahead. What's your question for Raj Sharma?
Yeah. Number one is, I just want to know, when will this new law be effective? My second question is again related to the first one, because I just finished my 3 years in Canada, and out of 3 years, I spent 6 weeks overseas. Means every year I get 2 weeks of vacation. So, first year I spent 2 weeks of vacation, and then second and third year, I used that for my education in the States. So I was wondering, should I wait for another 6 weeks to apply for my citizenship, or should I go ahead and apply?
That's a great question. Where does this new system leave Anil, Raj?
Well, I think in terms of Anil, you can go online and there's a residency calculator on the website, and it tells you whether you meet the basic residency requirements under the current system. In terms of when this law will be passed, I don't know. I mean, they have a majority government. It's been tabled. I don't think it takes them a long time to pass a bill that they want to pass. So personally, as soon as you qualify using that residency calculator online, I would apply.
And Anil, can I just ask you, you were talking about getting, further education in the States, which is what took you out of the country. You took a couple of weeks vacation and left the country. Yeah. One of the things that I think many people who are already Canadian citizens don't understand is that these residency requirements are there, but a lot of people actually are entrepreneurs who cannot live in Canada 365 days a year. So could you explain that a little bit, Raj? Because some people might say, why don't people have to live here all 6 years if they want to become Canadian citizens?
Well, that sort of requirement doesn't take into account the state of today's globalized economy. And, at the same time, we want individuals to come to Canada who are leaders in their field, who are going to contribute to the economy, who are going to build businesses. Well, many of the products that we make in Canada or sell are sold to individuals outside. So you are going to see individuals who may be in a position of traveling more than 6 months out of a year. Should we penalize them, even though those individuals, perhaps create dozens of jobs in Canada? Again, under the old system, you had some flexibility. Under the new system, you need 2 feet on the ground, 4 years out of 6, and that may be, we may lose out a little bit on that sort of talent.
What do you think of the new rules, Anil?
Yeah, I think in my opinion, it makes sense to have 4 years out of 6 years, and that too on a permanent residency. That's good. I think it's going to tighten up some of the things. It might be a bit tougher for the new immigrants, but from the perspective of Canadian immigration, it makes sense.
Thanks very much.
I'm supportive of that, yeah.
You are. Thank you very much for the call, Anil. We appreciate it. And we got this question from a listener, from Ted, Raj, and Ted is in Edmonton, and he wants to know, not everyone is educated, especially if they are coming from a non-English speaking country. They might be good people and good citizens. So he thinks the rules are too harsh. So I think he is raising questions about the language requirements for some people.
Well, back to the sort of superfluous and unnecessary requirement of the language, many of the immigrants that come here, certainly anyone that comes on a skilled basis here, Canadian Experience Class, Federal Skilled Worker, tens of thousands of these permanent residents, they already pass a language test to come to Canada. So making them do another language test, again, makes no sense. Again, it takes, there's got to be some flexibility in the system or some discretion in the system. But again, for whatever reason, we've taken discretion out of the system. So yeah, you are going to see individuals, and I'm not talking about the economic immigrants that make up 60% of the total 250,000 are economic immigrants. So out of 40%, you got parents and spouses. And as parents are a very low number, it's the majority of them are spouses. And then you've got refugees. So I think those individuals will be disproportionately impacted.
So the refugees might have a harder time becoming Canadian citizens because of these new language requirements.
Correct.
All right. Thank you very much. And thanks for that question, Ted. And we have Steve on the line now in Calgary. Hello, Steve. What do you think of these new rules for Canadian immigration?
Well, the 186 days per year of residency here is reasonable enough. The problem I have with is the language, because a lot of immigrants do not have the chance to learn English properly. They learn it on the job. Their English is grammatically grossly incorrect, and therefore they could not possibly pass even a minimal, low-level grammar test. And then there are women who are here with their husbands who look after the children in the home, and again, they do not have the opportunity to learn properly, and they want to, but they just don't have a chance to get out of the house other than go to Safeway, where, they don't have to speak. They just show them how much they owe. And so that is not fair, because these people contribute as much as those who speak English well, and that's all I've got to say about it.
Well, Steve, thank you very much for sharing your point of view with us, because it's a very interesting point you're making. And you had said earlier, Raj, that the discretion of the citizenship judges will be, I don't know, is it eliminated?
Basically, they're going to be responsible for conducting oath-taking ceremonies now.
So what if there are questions about somebody who is the spouse of an immigrant who has, who does meet the essential requirements, but the spouse doesn't, and that person is contributing and would qualify in most other ways, but doesn't meet the language requirement?
There's any number of fact scenarios that could give rise to injustice. We could have an individual who has Down syndrome who's in the country and wouldn't be disentitled to, for example, the right to vote. Now, there's plenty of individuals with that condition that have normal intelligence, but may not be able to pass, for example, language tests. Ultimately, hard facts make bad law. And so, when you look at, there's a reason for discretion. There's a reason why the system has subjectivity and some amount of discretion built into the system. If you relegate everything to a checklist, you are going to see deserving individuals who contribute to Canada and who will be unable to vote, for example.
Mm-hmm. And I guess there would be, how many, would there be thousands of these people across the country who would seek the minister's discretionary approval in this case? Like, how would those people ever make it through, or would they not?
We don't know that yet. I mean, I was on a panel discussion yesterday, and the president of the Mennonite Association for Resettlement up in Edmonton was saying, well, we can hope, right? Well, hope is not enough. We really need institutional safeguards. So I guess we'll find out. I mean, the numbers for the total grant of citizenships per year has dropped precipitously. So let's see what the proof will be in the pudding. Well, let's wait and see what happens.
All right. Thank you. And thanks very much for that call, Steve. We got this email from a listener who says, I had married a woman while living outside of Canada and agreed to sponsor her immigration. The day that she received her citizenship letter, she left the marriage and moved in with a boyfriend. I feel like I have been a victim of marital fraud. Does this happen to others, and what recourse do I have? Is this the kind of thing that could be dealt with in this new act?
Well, no,
coming?
She probably didn't get her citizenship papers. She probably got her permanent residency papers. If she got her citizenship papers, that implies that she was with you for at least 3 or 4 years in Canada. Marriage fraud is very, very common. We see it all the time. The previous Minister of Citizenship and Immigration Canada, Jason Kenney, went up and down the country publicizing how he's going to crack down on marriage fraud. The reality is that in Calgary alone, there's over 1,000 enforcement cases, and there's only 9 officers. So this is again something that we've seen a lot of. A tale, sound and fury signifying very little.
It sounds like a sad story. Thank you very much for your email. And we have Gashaw with us now on the line in Edmonton. Hello, Gashaw. What do you think of the new citizenship rules?
The new citizenship rules, I think considering the benefits of the original intention of those who proposed this rule, I totally agree with it. It's a way of integrating people into the society. I agree with that. But I have a question for Raj.
Sure, go ahead.
Is citizenship, Canadian citizenship, is it a right or is it a privilege? I have met the minimum residency requirement, and I have written my test back in February 2012. And so far, nothing is happening. So I was just wondering.
In your circumstances, it's a right. So if you look at the Citizenship Act, Section 5 deals with the grant of citizenship. So the grant of citizenship requires a couple of different things. One is, of course, the residency requirement. And so at a certain point, it's not may, it becomes shall. You're caught up in this massive backlog. It's not just you. There's 350,000 other individuals just like you that are in a massive backlog because there was a decision made to analyze people for residency fraud. So out of that, 350,000 backlog, about 11,000 cases have been flagged, and I believe about a couple of individuals have lost their status in Canada. So the previous minister cast a very, very wide net. You are caught up in that wide net, notwithstanding that you meet the residency requirement. You may have one option. You might go to the federal court and request an order of mandamus, but that's very, very expensive. It's like using a hammer to kill a mosquito. So the only practical advice I can tell you is to be patient and to wait.
It's great to get your call, Gashaw, but it sounds extremely upsetting, the situation that he's in, especially if he has met all the requirements. It is his right, obviously, as you point out. It's not a privilege, but there is this gigantic backlog. So will the new rules, very briefly, Raj, will the new rules prevent further cases?
They say by 2015 that processing will be down to less than a year. Let's wait and see.
I guess everybody's crossing their fingers, Gashaw. Thank you. And just to have time to share a couple of tweets here. One is very similar to Gashaw's comment. It is already a daunting process with years-long waits. And a tweet from Rebecca who says, as a U.S. citizen with a master's degree, married to a Canadian, believe me, negotiating the bureaucracy is already hard enough. And I invite all of you to call our talkback line because I apologize to those of you who didn't make it on. There's many of you. Please do share your thoughts at 1-800-461-9219 or send along an email to alberta@noon@cbc.ca or a tweet to alberta@noon. Raj, thank you so much for your insights. It's obviously a very Byzantine process to those of us who are outside of it, but maybe to you too.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. That is Raj Sharma. He is an immigration lawyer. He is with Stewart, Sharma, and Harzani. And coming up on tomorrow's program, we are looking at public-private partnerships. Some people say they are actually undermining our essential